You wake up. You're alone. It's early. The silence of night surrounds you. Out your window, a dull blue cakes the ground with no one to see it but you. Hours will pass before the sun breaks and illuminates the sky again. You turn on the TV.
Hey friends, welcome to the first of many deep dives into an online horror series. Since I've already wasted a bunch of time on a cool artsy intro, I'll just quickly go over how I'm going to structure this video. And as always, there are chapters and timestamps if there's anything you'd like to skip. I'm going to start by going back over every canonical Local 58 video in original release order, while highlighting anything I find important and noteworthy. Next, I'll go over my own theories and piece together the narrative as best as I can before finally taking a peek at popular theories others have formulated. Hope you don't mind the longer videos since I wanted to take more time whistling like this. I'd always appreciate any feedback, negative or positive, in the comments. But yeah, grab a coffee, sit back, and enjoy. We joined the broadcast in a late night, early morning. Sometime between 12 and 2 a.m., judging by the nightly schedule, where we're interrupted by a slightly alarming emergency alert, warning of an impending meteorological event that shouldn't be observed with the naked eye. We return to the normal broadcast where the schedule now reads 2:15 a.m., which to me says that we're at the end of the previous schedule. In other words, focus on faith. The text begins to read blood of the before once again being interrupted with an alert elevating the emergency, now advising people to stay indoors. This alert is seemingly tampered with midway through, now saying the warning has been lifted and to go outside now. The original alarm comes back and attempts to fruitlessly warn against going outside. The broadcast is interrupted one last time, recounting the following. It's in the light. The moon came in. He found me. Through the mirror. Moonlight white, white like eyes, not light but blood, I drown in him. If you are afraid, I will look through. When it cuts to a view of the moon with audible screaming in the background. As we can see, the moon and the sky are not to be trusted in this world, apparently harnessing the capabilities to either manipulate analog signals or brainwash people into changing it for them. I think it's pretty clear that the moon is either alive, part of a living thing, or our flawed perception of something beyond perceiving. Something along those lines. Another interesting note is the blood of the title potentially linking to the not light but blood message. Just some food for thought. Our next broadcast takes us back in time, as we can tell from the transition from VHS distortions to film grain, along with the earlier appearance of the logo. We join at the end of a broadcast day at 3 a.m., and we see the signing off message, along with a photo of the moon landing, which places us past 1969 at least. As expected, the broadcast is interrupted by a message from the government that is to be used only in the event of complete surrender to insurmountable enemy forces. The message gives instructions for the citizens of the United States to follow, and calls them to act to maintain their spirit in the face of defeat. The initial message is signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson, who left office prior to the moon landing, but I'll discuss timing more in the analysis section. What this action citizens are being called to means becomes apparent fairly quickly, as the announcement clarifies there's nothing to fear, and to use the method most available to you at this time, before outright suggesting a firearm They proceed to outline the victory position and the 3 Fs. Front lawn, face up, feet together. Face up? Towards the moon. The most spine-chilling part follows as it instructs you to tend to your children before yourself and address them in a calm tone, before calling infants and pets the smallest patriots. Ugh. As this announcement comes to an end, a reel is played as an apology for this hoax being played. The time of airing is a bit hard to pinpoint, but for certain, it's between 1969 and 1975. More likely, sometime prior to the expiration of the contingency message in November 1970. But an argument could be made for it being closer to the 1975 date we see at the end. A couple interesting notes. The badge for the Department for the Preservation of American Dignity is present in both the hoax message and apology message. And the fact that hoax is in quotations, and the phrasing of accidental public broadcast, leads me to believe this was a real message from the government that was not meant to be shown at this time, as opposed to a complete hoax. The question remains, what enemy could lead the United States to call for the death of all of her citizens? This video takes us back to the future? Present? I don't know. Like usual, it begins with a schedule, this time listing a midnight movie, and paid programming that is replaced before we cut away to dash cam footage. I'd assume this is the paid programming because why else would this ever be aired on TV? Also the time of the video and the time of airing line up closely, but I don't know. The timestamp very clearly states 2014, which clashes with the VHS artifacting visible in the schedule, but aside from that, this looks to be our farthest glimpse timeline-wise into the world of Local 58. We follow an unnamed driver as they listen to their GPS, and it takes them wildly off course. From highways to service roads to an unnamed dirt path in the woods. It's on this path that the GPS instructs them to turn off their headlights.
In 300 feet, turn off your headlights.
And they oblige. Doing so, a loud roar is heard, followed by the appearance of our first creature, unless you're counting the moon. It gives chase and ultimately catches the driver, ending in their presumed death. This one had a sizable impact on the aesthetics of analog horror series that would come after it, and is definitely pretty freaky. We can assume that the creature our driver is led to is either an envoy of or a creature from the moon, but its real purpose is unknown. The technological manipulation occurring is also more involved than what we've seen in previous videos, where it was questionable in the first whether it could have been direct signal interference or controlling a human to modify the broadcast. This one's very concrete, and in case you could still sleep tonight, here's the raw image of the creature. That just about wraps up what's labeled the Season 1 of Local 58, but there's far more to come.
So don't touch that dial now.
We're now seeing a distinctly 80s aesthetic with the new logo here, and we're met with the now iconic schedule. Although I'm not sure if 4:15 AM is a suitable time for a children's show, what do I know? As you'd come to expect, there's an artifact in the tape as it jumps forward to... oh dear god, what is that thing? It jumps to us meeting this adorable fella, Cadaver. You may have already noticed this cartoon is certainly a lot older than the time of airing, and the copyright date at the bottom places us way back in 1929, which certainly expands the timeline a bit. As the cartoon starts, we join Cadaver and... the moon in a nightly stroll through a graveyard. He's stopped by an open grave in his path, and hopes to find a cute girl skeleton inside. But instead, peeking through, he sees this. Understandably spooked, he runs off. He happens upon another open grave, and this time, with the moon looking in over his shoulder, he's met with a new creature that looks like a facehugger mixed with a bird? We continue on and the music is halted, as the moon's expression changes to a dead stare. Coming up to the last grave, Cadaver finds a hole. So of course, he climbs down and begins to explore, eventually coming upon a hole for him to lay in, looking up at the moonlight. Taking one last look at its work, the moon, with what looks to be an eye, stares down at Cadaver in his grave. before he too decays. That wraps up this— oh Jesus Christ. That wraps up this meaty episode. The real purpose of this animation is hard to figure out, but it clearly shows that this phenomenon we're following in Local 58 is not anything new. I'd like to point out a little interesting note. The video has a strange amount of parallels to weather service, with the death of our character after looking at the moon, and the moon literally coming in. That isn't the sky. It's literally in the cave with him. More of a stretch, but the white like eyes line from weather service too. The creature in the second grave could also be an infant or larval form of what we see in You're on the Fastest Available Route. This part of the head here could be a beak, and the creature does have what looks to be a tail. Maybe the moon killed cadaver for finding or upsetting one of its babies. We return to the iconic red logo from the 80s and are met with a peculiar schedule. By now we become adjusted to the strange time of airing for these episodes, but now there's just a single thing in the schedule, at 3 p.m. Real sleep. The unusual nature of this video doesn't stop here either. We are not supposed to be seeing this. This tape was meant for a Mr. Philip Gerhardt, but somehow ended up in our little local station. The tape was created by the Thought Research Initiative, TRI, and the copyright also gives us a presumed date of viewing, 1983. Let's see where this takes us. The videotape proceeds to go over myths and facts about sleeping and dreaming. The way they're presented is very clearly meant to feel manipulative, and almost reminds me of cult indoctrination. Section 2 discusses the Kleitman map, which according to the TRI, allows them to cancel out dreaming in a similar way to inverse sound waves canceling each other out. This next section reaffirms that this was not meant to be viewed by anyone other than the intended recipient of the tape, and begins utilizing an optical illusion to make these faces appear inhuman. As we come to our third sequence, ablation of subconscious, it feels like dreaming isn't the only thing they're removing. Having the viewer repeat the phrase, "there are no faces," while flashing a mix of normal and distorted faces, it continues to hammer in the idea. I have a lot to say about this section, but I'll save it for the discussion afterwards. Sequence 4 is titled Acceptance, and it tasks the viewer with reading the following phrases, without reading. Only the awake may think of decisions that promote my cognitions like dreaming is a cancer, they false dreams. A dream is unconscious of the mind without tiring, easy or time. As children stay out of this dreams are just After these messages are injected into your subconscious, the tape advises you to consult your technician if you are experiencing delayed results and or unwanted side effects, and to not see a doctor. Phew. There's a lot to go over with this video in particular. First, I'd like to reiterate that this is not intended for broadcast on Local 58. This is someone's personal tape given to them by the Thought Research Initiative. Throughout the viewing, it utilizes methods of hypnosis and suggestion to condition the viewer into becoming an anti-dreamer. Along with that, whatever this initiative is, seems to have the ability to cancel out someone's dreams. Something I've had a little theory about is the correlation between how this implies the brain works in a similar way to an analog signal, interpreting it through a wave that is able to be cancelled out with an inverted phase wave. This could tie into the moon entity's abilities to manipulate technology. The third sequence of the video is already tremendously important, but trust me, I'll be returning to it later with even more. While it flashes distorted faces, it becomes clear that this tape is not only attempting to relieve us of our dreams, but also numb our mind's natural instincts of pattern recognition, specifically the phenomenon of pareidolia and the uncanny valley. You may be wondering why some organization would want to undo this, and I have a few theories for later. Most importantly is to internalize that something doesn't want you to see faces where there are some. This last section is a lot. Only 2 phrases from this list are spoken aloud though. There are no faces, and I dream a world awake. I feel as though this section clarifies what we're seeing as a work of the moon again, although that may seem obvious. But keep the faces in mind, for now. Alright, on to skywatching, where we have another new logo, this one leaning most closely into a 90s look. The schedule tonight shows skywatching at midnight and a city council meeting with a date attached. I would assume that this would indicate a date around this time, because why would you rerun a city council meeting? But this might not be the case. We'll come back to this in a little bit. The broadcast of skywatching begins, which appears to be a documentary of some sort, before it's interrupted by amateur handheld camera footage of the sky. This video shows us, in order, Orion's belt,
Pleiades.
and the moon, his throne. We get our first good close-up look of the moon in this universe, and it's... yeah. We see the moon is made up of an alien fleshy membrane. As our cameraman explores the moon, they come across an unnatural structure that's difficult to describe, other than unusual. Before we can even begin to comprehend what we're exactly looking at, the moon vanishes before our eyes, and as the cameraman swaps their lens again, it returns uncomfortably close this time, accompanied by blaring sirens and sporting a new appearance. Our cameraman, intoxicated by whatever psychological manipulation ability this otherworldly abomination has, is lost to the moon, and one word appears: rejoice. The video ends, and for a split second we can catch a copyright date of 1994, which last time I checked is definitely not 1991. This video gives us a really good idea of what the moon might actually be, at least according to one theory I've been considering. At points, it appears as if the moon is crumbling in on itself, revealing an interior of something. And the final image of the moon with our cameraman in front of it really makes me feel like it's some sort of creature hatching from an egg. We can see the edges here breaking into a membrane, and the reveal of whatever this all is. Given the bird symbolism seen in both the Around the Fastest Available Routes creature and the grave critter from Show for Children, might lean a little into this idea for the full theory section. That's all there is for Season 2 of Local 58, according to the channel's official ordering. The video digital transition doesn't appear in any of the playlists on the channel, which does bring it into question, though I'm going to cover it here regardless, along with the episode Close, briefly. This video follows the mandatory digital transition of Local 58, and we're actually given a solid definitive date of broadcast, July 13th, 2021. We continue further to see approximate years of operation for each of the Local 58 logos. But before I cover them all, I'd like to make note of the first news event being covered, a vague mining disaster. Put a pin in that for now. First up, we see the first logo listed as 1938, followed by various black and white movies. This new logo, first visible as 1952. The logo from Contingency, first visible in 1966. This one from Show for Children in 1977. The logo from Skywatching in 1988. The classic first logo in 2002. And a modern logo in 2013. After this, we see a new simplified logo for the new digital station, before it's interrupted. Something clearly isn't happy about the transition. In the background of the scene, we can faintly make out a title of Betrayal, with a poem as follows. I the one you watched, I the always here. They make you thought from pieces. They cut the thoughts I am. All knife, all knife. Thoughts shaped in needles. They dream themselves in knives. We see more familiar distortions before finally being met with another message. I'm thinking they move to cut his throat, only to make 1,000 mouths. If he is silenced, we will speak for him. Signs and wonders flood our little sky. No stars above us, only eyes waiting to open. There are other receivers. This video is interesting. It does help a lot with clarifying some years of logos, which makes my life a lot easier, while also setting up some potential ideas. Specifically, I'd like to highlight the use of the word betrayal, which implies the station was complicit in the actions over the course of the series. The poem is very intriguing as well. The way the dialogue is written and the way it's addressed gives me the feeling this is the actual moon entity speaking directly, and the other messages we've seen throughout the series have been going through other people. I'll dive further into meanings once I get to the theory section. Okay, close. I actually watched this one live. It's a bit difficult to cover, being as it's 30 minutes of rising tension, so I'll just pick out the most important events from it. We follow a lander approaching a comet titled 57838 Eidolon. While the comet itself has a horrifying appearance, the main thing of note is the door on it. The lander makes contact with the comet, and we can clearly see a door, followed by the door opening and flinging the lander off the comet. I'm just going to keep it transparent that I have no idea what this could mean. My best guess would relate it to being something in response to the digital transition in the last episode, but I'm honestly lost. That officially puts us into the newly released Season 3, which actually released on the same day that I last mentioned Local 58 in a video. We're going to see a very different Local 58 though. I'll see you there. We're firmly in the modern day now, and our schedule looks shockingly normal for Local 58. Up first, we have Nightwalk from 1977, so let's dive in. For once, we're actually seeing the scheduled program, and it gives us a brief history of the setting of our story. We see, again, a mining disaster mentioned. A lot of the text is difficult to make out, but we can make out that at least 450 miners were trapped in here, along with some other harrowing news stories. After this, we meet the topic of this episode, the woman in profile. Originating in 1961, the narrator mentioned that she may have been the sole witness to a murder, although, as you come to realize, this may have been more than a witness. Our narrator is cut off by homemade footage dating to November of 1996, where we come face to profile, with the woman in profile during an encounter. As the cameraman shines a light over to her, we catch a glimpse of what it really is. The tape rewinds with a message this time. A predator cannot differentiate between prey and accomplice. It's clear that Season 3 is a pretty big departure from the previous two, and due to the recency of this, and lack of any further episodes, I don't have much to go off here. We do now know that Mason County is a hotspot for strange happenings, although it could just be a callback to Chris Dropp's previous works, and we meet quite the interesting creature. Upon first watching, one would likely take this at face value, and assume that the woman in profile is the predator in this situation, luring the humans in as prey. But since I'm not sure where else to put this speculation, I'd like to throw in a mini theory. In the case of the quote, humans are the predators, the meaning behind the line with this interpretation would be that a human can't tell the difference between prey, a woman looking up at the sky being entranced by the moon, and accomplice, as in the woman being a creature with the sole purpose of manipulating whoever may see her into looking up. Anyway, I've been recapping the series for a while. I think it's time to take a crack at a little theorizing. Okay, if you just skipped here to see the theory section, welcome. This story is a bit unconventional, so it's a little difficult to cover the entire thing in a normal way, but I'm gonna try my best. Our earliest glimpse into the world of Local 58 comes in the form of the newspaper seen in Nightwalk, dated to 1907. This newspaper details numerous tragedies, but chief among them is a mining disaster. This is one of two mentioned in the series, or is it? I'd like to bring your attention to Show for Children for a moment. Cadaver finds a skeleton in an open grave, notably lacking a casket or anything like it. Next, what I've previously assumed to be an infant form of the creature in Euro on the fastest available route, buried in the ground. And finally, a hole into a cave. And the cave is ultimately Cadaver's resting place as the moon comes in and seemingly kills him. You may see where I'm going with this connection already. I believe the cartoon, A Grave Mistake, is a semi-retelling of the events of the first mining disaster. I believe that during the mining operation in 1907, the miners stumbled across this creature, a child, for lack of a better word, of the moon, and disturbed it. In retaliation, the moon somehow caved in the mine, trapping and killing the hundreds of miners mentioned in the newspaper. I have two potential theories for the purpose of this creature, or what exactly it is. First, calling back to the crumbling appearance of the moon in skywatching, looking as if it's a creature being hatched from an egg. What we see in the hole could be an early form of whatever the shape in the moon is, and it's using the Earth as another egg. Something similar could have happened to the moon a long time ago, And the way these eldritch entities work could be using these celestial bodies as literal bodies, piloting and controlling them like cordyceps controlling ants. My other theory is probably the more likely one, with the usage of the phrase accomplice in Nightwalk. The moon itself is a living thing that feeds/survives off of other planets via various manipulation techniques, and it creates and sends creatures down to whatever planet it's currently in the process of harvesting, with the purpose of aiding in this manipulation. Okay, so that's what the moon and the creature potentially are. What about Local 58 itself? I think it goes without saying that the station is another accomplice, or at least was. The word betrayal is not used lightly or coincidentally. It's difficult without knowing even more, but it's clear that for some time following the coverage of the mining disaster, the station was controlled by or the product of the moon entity. How exactly this happened is, from what I can tell, yet to be seen, unless there's been smaller scale events similar to what we've seen in skywatching, where the moon has collected followers through some kind of mind control. Before we sign off for the night, I'd like to take a moment to cover some popular theories. I've avoided reading into any to present this video with my own interpretation of the events, but here I'll be going against that just for a moment. First and foremost is, at least from what I can see, probably the most popular theory for people uninvested into the series, the alien theory, which has been confirmed untrue on multiple occasions by the creator. So we can write off seeing a future episode of little green guys invading the planet, sadly. Very similar to my own theory seems to be the next most popular, which is the eldritch horror theory. It seems a lot of people agree that the moon is in some way alive, or in the case of taking the throne literally, housing something alive. This also heavily supports the idea of it exerting some kind of power over people to influence their actions. And who knows if there's one. Thank you for putting up with this longer video. If this is something you liked, or didn't, let me know in the comments. Upload should resume a more normal schedule now, hopefully, and I have some fun ideas for stuff I hope y'all will like, and maybe some monsters to hunt. That's all for now, though. Good night.